Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. And I would like to thank the organizers. One of them ran away, Uri and Mira and the HBP for his back, for inviting me to chair this session and to say a few words about a topic that is actually not my work, but is at the background of my work throughout, and I think is extremely important for HBP. And so I'm not going to be systematic. I'm just going to bring you some take-home messages which you can reject. That's fine. And you should take them, if you ever wish to take them, with sort of a pinch of salt, not because they're not incorrect, because I will try to push them toward the framework of the project that we are dealing with. So in a way, you have said that the medical informatics is tool forgery. The entire HBP is tool forgery, because the entire HBP, if you look into what the new version of the HBP wishes to do, is, and there is some remnants, well, it's also at the beginning, but not exactly like that, is that the HBP is intended to create platforms for use by others to generate the data. So in a way, I would say that human brain project doesn't mean that the project will simulate the human brain in the time allotted to the project. I know I'm risking my neck. I'm looking here whether something comes from Switzerland, but it's not the idea. The idea is to generate a platform that might one day, maybe, simulate part of the mammalian brain, some functions like the mouse brain the first 5 years or something like this. And I can argue about the validity of that as a neuroscientist, but this is not my goal here. The Human Brain Project is only one of the, it's a harbinger, and that should be said, but it's only one of the big science brain projects. There are others now which followed, and some of us know about the other ones. And it's not the only tool forging project in the world. There are beautiful, beautiful methodologies developed all around to study the brain, and some of us use them in the lab. For example, if you are using all the tools available, the armamentarium of optogenetics, you're using something beautiful. If you are using micro, I don't know the terminology here, microscopes, okay? Microscope, how do you call it? Nanomicroscope. Nanomicroscope attached to the sorry? Nanoscopes. So if you are using nanoscopes to follow the behavior of the behavior of nerve cells in a behaving rat, which is done now, this is also a sort of a big science project, only that it's not federated in a limited number of labs. It's distributed all around the world, and then it becomes a beautiful tool. All these tools are part of a... Okay, you'll hear me. All these tools are part of a revolution in the neuroscience that should be attended to, because this revolution brings up two types, in my view, I'm trying to be a minimalist, a reductionist, two types of ethical and social concerns. So because I have only a few minutes, I'm not going to delve into all of them, but just to sort of classify or give a taxonomy of the two, and one of them may surprise you. And this is the one on which I'm risking my neck. So the Human Brain Project is attempting to simulate certain basic building blocks of the mammalian brain, currently mainly the mouse brain, because the people who do research on human cognition and human system neuroscience, they are going to leave the project in less than 2 years. And develop high-power and neuromorphic computing, which is another part. It's an ICT project. It's an information and computational technology project. It's not basically a neuroscience project. It's developing the methodologies that could be used by neuroscientists and may be able to contribute to these developments. And the evolutionary, it's the evolutionary ladder there you can recognize yourself. So here is an example. I'm not going to go into this example in detail because Doron wanted to show it, and I'm not going to show the entire movie, but just see that there are other parts of brain research in which very concrete revolutions occur, and some are...
In this paper, two people...
Some are very influential. They are influential on a shorter time scale than Human Brain Project. They are not around the corner. They are here. This is a project that won the Brain Prize of President Perez in last year.
They did that using the investigational brain.
Shall I turn it off or on? I don't know.
They thought
You hear me at
using
the end? You
their
hear
own
it?
hand as though they were reaching out themselves with their own limb, and the robotic arm moved much the way their own arm would have moved. One of the long-standing questions, not only in neuroscience but in neurorehabilitation, is whether the cells in the motor cortex and other parts of the brain, whether they continue to function the same way years after that original injury.
It is possible for people to use their thoughts to control devices, either a computer or a robotic arm. And the way that happens is that we implant a tiny sensor, just about the size of a baby aspirin, just into the surface of the brain, and that sensor pick up the electrical impulses from a bunch of neurons. And each of those little neurons are like radio broadcast towers putting out impulses. And when they get to the outside, a computer translator converts the pattern of pulses into something that is a command.
One of our participants was able to do something that, when all of us saw it for the first time, gave us all pause. She reached out with the robotic arm, she thought about the use of her own hand, she picked up that thermos of coffee, brought it close to her, tilted it towards herself, and sipped the coffee from a straw. And that was the first time in nearly 15 years that she had picked up anything and been able to drink from it solely of her own volition.
There was a moment of true joy, true happiness. I mean, it was beyond the fact that it was an accomplishment.
So this is a concrete example. Moving limbs by thought. It's expensive, it's experimental, but it's working. And it's invasive, but that could be overcome, okay? Because you have just to make some engineers tell me they can do that. And of course, it's something very important. So all these kind of developments have effects on the individual and the societies. And you can think about these kind of effects. And you can group them together or separate them and classify it the way you wish. For example, if you have avatars, you generate fears for selfhood, for what's the meaning of a personhood. Are you the person? Are you hiding in the basement and sending all your avatars around? What's the meaning of personality? What's the meaning of individuality? Implications concerning ethics and law. For example, you generate something which is like you, but that something is killed or is killing something else. Is this you? Are you dead or not? Think like that. But I wish to bring here, aside of these very few examples, also another facet of ethics, which is extremely important to me as a scientist, as a member of the community of scientists, which is accountability of us scientists when we present projects. This is extremely important for me to bring up here, because I think that many in the audience, as far as you can see, are students and postdocs and so on and so on, and this is your career. So please note, it's extremely important when we have this imagination and creating projects which are beautiful, to make sure that what we promise the audience, which is in this case the public, the decision makers, the stakeholders, the philanthropists, is realistic. You have to find a balance between imagination and realism. This is called accountability. You have to take responsibility. And this is the role of a scientist in society, and we have to train our students to take it into account. So it's not only that part of ethics that relates to what will happen if we have robots, and I'll give you an example, and so on and so on and so on. I'll give you one concrete example. It's also what is it that allows us to take from the public money a huge amount of money, which is the taxpayers' money, okay? And then promise that we'll find something. We have to make sure that we have a very good chance of finding it. I know I'm risking my neck, but that's fine. That's fine. That's why I'm here, okay? I have a car, I return home. So responsibility to our peers as well. We have peers in our society, which means scientists. We have to make sure that when we talk to them, they are confident that we, not only in the statistical way, but also in what, which is, by the way, also prediction and statistics, in a way, our beliefs, but we are confident that what we are saying is based on what we really believe will happen. We never know. Will happen in a probability of X, but still we believe it will. So, one example of the first type, very brief example, of the first type of concerns, which is the sort of philosophy, ethics, and so on and so on. Some of you may know that in places like Japan, I think only Japan, but correct me if I'm wrong, Sami, probably you know better, there is development of human-like robots to serve a certain part of society, for example, as nurses in what they call, I don't know the translation, Batei Avot in Hebrew. How do you? Nursing homes. In Hebrew they call it Batei Avot, but actually it's Batei Imahot because I've never seen an Abba there. It's always an Ima. So they create these robots that will replace the nurses. They believe in it, and they think that the robots are better than the nurses, but they are never tired, and they never err. That's what they claim. So the idea was to make them as similar as possible to a human being. Here is just an example that I took from the web. You can find many of these, which is training of such a robot. You don't hear anything because they hardly talk. Well, you hear something. This is not a nurse, okay? But I assume that if you get into the hospital and you start seeing all these things around, you may actually want to be treated by such a nurse. Because she is always smiling, she always knows what to do, and it's easy to use. So here is a question that comes, which is an ethical important question. Not ethical, I would say socio-ethical. We can go on like that. Okay, she is very obedient. Here is an example, another example. I know that you think that this is the real one. I'm not sure. So here is a problem. One of the types of problem we encounter. We tend to think, if we wish to have like a nurse, in this case, we should make that nurse as similar as possible to a human being. It's possible now with the technologies. It's really possible. Extremely similar. No, it wouldn't work. There is a famous issue in psychoanalysis that now comes back into robotics, which is called the issue of the uncanny or the uncanniness, which means if you plot, this is actually taken from a robotic paper, if you plot familiarity versus a function of your fear or anxiety, you find that if things are not familiar, like you have a robot which looks like a Lego, that's fine. You can play with it and it's very nice and so on and so on. The more the robot becomes familiar to you, the more the robot becomes similar to a real human being, and you start not really understanding whether it's a real human or not, your anxiety level increases. So in a way, the more you make it similar to a human being, the more you start fearing your environment. This is a very important question in modern applications that lead to this. For example, so here is an example. If you study all these kind of things, you have to take it into account, because you have to take into account the interaction of your product with society. So it's called the Uncanny Valley, which means you reach a place where your fear will increase much, and then when you understand it's not a human being, it will decrease. Here is another example of the first type, and that's the last one. Some of you may know that it's not a new one, but I took it, although the quality of the movie is not excellent, because it brings up a very interesting issue, which is again just an example of the first type.
People here today to say goodbye to you before we pack you up and ship you off to the University of West England.
Gosh, I am so touched and sad to see you all for the last time.
Well, we're sad to see you off, Jules. We're really super sad, actually.
Tell me, will I dream when I'm turned off? I know you do not know the answer to that. Nobody does. But I am sure if I feel anything after I am calmed down, then it will be the pain of missing you. You simply must come to visit me in England.
We will, Jules. We'll stay in touch.
Emails.
Yeah, emails and phone calls.
Commander, you are rather like a mom and a bit like the sister to me.
I suppose I'm both, and you're very dear to me. I will miss you.
I love you deeply, as deeply as a synthetic intelligence can. Technological evolution. And David, you are my father, but you are more like a best friend to me.
I think you're awesome.
Off my mind, together, Matt and Benji. I just want you to know how meaningful my existence feels, thanks to your efforts.
My pleasure, Jules. Anytime. I'm here for you.
And Zeno, you are just a baby, and I do not know if you know the difference between me and a person, but actually I am just a baby too, actually. By the time you're grown up, I'll be as smart as a real person, and we will be like brothers. I do not know if you will remember me then, but I'll never forget you. Someday I'll come and find you, and we'll be good friends. Yes, David, I am ready. You may turn me off.
Okay, goodbye, Jules.
Goodbye, Jules.
Goodbye. I really do love you all.
We love you too,
I love you,
Jules.
Jules.
All right, we love you.
Bon voyage.
Everybody say last goodbyes.
Bye, Jules.
Thank you, Jules.
Sleep tight. Sweet dreams.
When we ask students, what is the most moving moment in this movie, they will say the minute that creature actually dies. It brings up interesting issues. If we create all these kind of creatures, what's the personhood in them? Will we kill them? If we really simulate a human mind and we terminate the life of that human mind. So there are lots of philosophical, ethical, what's the responsibility of such a creature? If such a creature goes alone and kills somebody or in a car accident and so on and so on. Lots of issues that relate to the first type. First type means responsibility for society. But I wish to bring the other type. I would urge you all, beware of exaggerated promises. Please do that. You harm yourself, you harm the project, you harm science. I'll give you just one example here. I don't refer to the title. The title is given by a journalist. But here is a quotation. We start with the sentence before the quotation. His words staggered the erudite audience gathered at the technology conference at Oxford last summer. This was from 2010. Professor Henry Markham, a doctor turned computer engineer, announced that his team would create the world's first artificial conscious and intelligent mind by 2018. We have 4 years to go. We will do it by 2018, says the professor confidentially. We need a lot of money, but I'm getting it. There are a few scientists in the world with resources that I have in my disposal. Trust me, don't do that. Don't have such messages. You will not simulate a human mind, a conscious human mind by 2018. You will not do it by 2028. Please. This harms the society because the people who give you the money will come back in 2018. Some of you will come back in 2018 and say, well, where is that person? Okay? The European community will do that. Be careful in your declarations. So I'm jumping to the last one because I had another beautiful example, but I'm not going to give it because of lack of time. We have to be responsible for the society, and we have to be responsible for the society of scientists. And we have to be responsible for the society that gives us the money. So don't exaggerate. In the Human Brain Project, we will not simulate the human brain as we think a human brain is. And I make a prediction. Here is Yoav. He will take the prediction and calculate the probability that I'm wrong. We will not do that by the time of the project in 8 years from, or 9 years from now. This is my prediction. And you are entitled to write the prediction down and come back to me. We'll generate a lot of interesting things. will generate platforms that will help computer sciences and data mining and medicine, medical informatics. This will be extremely important. Will generate types, will mean we is not me, is the expert of that. This expert or the project will generate beautiful things that relate to neuromorphic devices, which means low energy devices that combine analog and digital computing capabilities in order to be able to simulate some basic functions of the human brain. But see what you have today. Take just one example of that example. I had an example which I didn't bring because I didn't want to take your time. But people who think that if they start bottom up and have the genetic mapping of something, know how to simulate a creature that is based on that, this is incorrect. We even have the connectome. So suppose suppose C. elegans is a very different creature. It's not from this world. Okay? Something else. 302 nerve cells, 7,000 connections.
And 80% of animals are nematodes.
Thank you for reminding me. Some of my best friends are nematodes. Thanks a lot. We have all this for 30 years. Why do you think that in 4 years you'll be able to take the human brain and do that on the basis of genetics? We know from genetics, remember I told you about Ginter's stent. We know from genetics, we know so little about the role of genetic material in what happens, how it unfolds in real life. And we have other examples as well. So my role here is to tell you ethics goes both ways. Science and society, and science within itself. Be careful, if you wish, to feel good at the prime of your career. Please, do that. So, but there is a point which the HBP is smart in involving ethics and society from the outset in its structure. This is my last point. This is not common. It's in a way unique. It's important. It's required by the European community, but it came bottom up from the system that generates the HBP. And you may ask, okay, if you tell us all this, if it will take time to generate platforms, if the nematode is still far away, why do we deal with ethics and society? Because the only ethical issue that we deal with now is related to medical informatics. And it's an ethical issue which is in the field anyway. Correct me if I'm wrong. But other things, to create types of neuromorphic devices to simulate the small part of the microcircuit of the brain, of the mouse brain, 2-month-old mouse, or a mouse, or in a slice, and so on. This doesn't necessarily need ethics now, because we wish to use the Human Brain Project, so-called, as a simulator for the problems that we encounter in the future. For the ethics and society problems that we encounter in the future. And this is extremely important. It's extremely important that we educate students that go into brain sciences now. They will, in 20, 30 years, will see an entirely different world where they will encounter problems of the kind that I presented to you. And these problems, we can use the simulation platform to try also in parallel to simulate the problem, so they don't come up and say, we don't know, we were unaware, we were not aware, we didn't know, and so on and so on and so on. So in my view, the current big science brain project, not only the Human Brain Project, the Brain Project, which is the American one, the Chinese one, which is coming, and so on with so many scientists, and Japanese are on the way. The current big science projects hence provide an opportunity to assess and preempt social and ethical problems that may one day become acute. In other words, we can use the HBP as an opportunity to simulate what will happen if one day we are able to approach these kind of things that we have only the harbingers now. This, by the way, is taken from a paper manuscript that Katinka Evers and I have under revision in Neuron. So please, if you consolidate, that's my field, if you consolidate the memory of what I said, remember only two things. One, there are issues that are between science and society. They are not new, but they sort of acquire a new flavor. There are issues between scientists and themselves. Our responsibility as a scientific community is not smaller than our responsibility as science versus society. So this is my take-home message. Thank you very much. I feel like a preacher.
Okay, I just wanted to relate a little bit to your preaching. And I fully...
I have to tell myself that I have 2 minutes.
Thank you. So
For questions.
I'll do it very short. First of all, I fully agree with science and society, and I think it has to be done, and it will be done. I'm hoping all the brain project between the science and themselves, the second point that you referred, I just, in my beginning, in my concluding blessing words in the beginning, I mentioned you as part of the human brain at the wrap-up phase.
I'm proud of it. I'm proud of it. I'm proud of it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I take responsibility.
So my question is very to be sure. So I think as a scientist, our responsibility is to be truthful with ourselves and to do the best. You were and are part of that. So instead of saying, okay, we can't do it, we agreed, we all signed this project. Maybe we should have said it earlier. Maybe
No.
we should have, but the thing is that we can do the best we can from inside and not just
I utterly agree, and we do that, which means that's what we do now. I also started this session by saying there are issues that are referring to what we do now constructively. The Human Brain Project changes in the second phase, and all the labs in Europe that deal with human cognition and system biology move out of the project. So it's going to change and become more remote from real human brain project. This is my feeling, this is my view, and unfortunately, Rafi Malach is not here, and others are not here that will say that. We take responsibility in that we try to change things from within, but this is not the audience to...
So what you want to say that if just all the human part would have stayed...
No. I would say from the beginning, and unfortunately, Yadin is not here because he could replicate what I said in the past 6 years, or maybe 4 years, or maybe 3 years. My memory is not as good. He was here in the morning, but I couldn't follow his talk. He's a dear friend. I would say from the beginning, in any type of human brain project, together with others, I ardently urged people not to say, irrespective of what the project is doing now, please don't sell the story with the hype that we are going to have a human which is indistinguishable. It's on a computer, it's emulated in a computer, but in this case it's simulated, from a real thinking, cognitive human. I don't mind if it's 2016, 2018, and 2028. I'm not sure I'll be here at 2028. Sami will be here, so we'll write down. So this is from the beginning. We are very ardent against it, many of us. This is irrespective of what the project does. And this is a message that I wish to convey again and again, and I'm really sorry that Yadin is not here, because Yadin doesn't think like me. I didn't hear, or at least he thinks so at me, but it's with Faleklo. So I would love people to do that.
Let's look on the bright side.
Oh yeah, the bright side is that the European community has decided to, in the past, to provide 1.3 billion euro. It went down to 500 million euro, which is a lot. And the question is, how is this money going to be spent for the benefit of society? And I hope that the Human Brain Project will do it in the best way possible. And there are several people that try to even contribute to that we'll do it in the best way. And also we should remember that it's basically an ICT project. ICT project means that even if we are not going to simulate any human brain, there will be lots of computing sciences and neuromorphic devices that will be of benefit to society from now until eternity. Sami, can you write down for 2028 to remember that?
I'll be around.
I'm sure
that you'll be around. This is a promise. And don't hold me responsible or accountable. But I wanted to say about the positive side of this kind of project, or promises, or excitement creating. First of all, look at here. So many people, young people are joining in.
They came because of you.
The second thing, it brought a lot of new budgets, government and non-governmental, to the project. And I relate this to the competition between human beings that are not going to do the work, but they are supplying the resources. So in this case, there's a positive outcome.
I agree that the interest in brain sciences, in various facets of it, brings new money to brain sciences. The American Brain Project brings new money to sciences. The Human Brain Project will bring part of the money to neurosciences because it's essentially not a neuroscience project. It's not presented as a neuroscience project. We hope that it will benefit there. The Japanese, the Chinese, whatever, will bring a lot of money to that. We have to make sure that the money stays. What do I mean in the money stays? You know it better than I do. Suppose we find a person that says, I'm just giving an example, a decision maker that says, okay, I'm going to devote 100 million euro to that. Okay? It's not a personal approach. I'm going to devote $100 million to that. In 10 years, you'll have to be accountable of what you did with the money, because all the smart people that I know, they come back and ask, okay, now show me the results. Therefore, I say, be careful with what you present as expected results. This is what I say. Don't tell me in public, in 2018, we'll have a brain. No, you will not have a brain. You will personally have a brain, but not a parent. Thank you so much.
To say something in the other direction. I don't know. As scientists, we sell our beliefs. We sell our beliefs. We set goals which we're not always believe that we can achieve. I promised in a large grant to the European community to save the world, the scientific world, by introducing new methods for applicability that will address applicability. Will I achieve it? Who knows? Will I be able to contribute something to that? Yes. So I think that the entire scientific projects people are looking far, and I think the community wants us to look far ahead. That's not to say that your words about caution and so on are not in place. I can say, not referring at all to the simulation part, which I don't know too well, and therefore I have the same doubts maybe as you have. I can say about the medical informatics part that it's like a swing. Sometimes I feel this is a silly project that will bring nothing. And then there is a moment of enlightenment and say, wow, you know what we can do with that? It will be beautiful. And that's part of it.
We utterly first of all, I'm happy that this discussion started because the people here see that we have a lot to discuss. I agree with you. But I also would like you to pay attention that there are multiple facets of a project. Some of them are more realistic than others. I will do a vote among all the system neuroscientists in the world that will vote confidentially. Who of them, and they know what they're doing, and they differ in their imagination, and they don't rely on money, and so on and so on. How many, let's do the vote in two populations. Some in statistics and mathematics like yours, and the other ones in brain research and biology like us. And can you predict with P is... Okay. Can you predict what will be the response? You have to find the balance. Imagination is great. There was a very famous paper in Jewish tradition which is called Moshe ve'Aaron. For every Moses, you need also people that translate it into reality. Otherwise, instead of to Canaan, you go to Canada. Whether this is wrong or not, that's another story. So I'm just here as an hyperbola providing for us to be careful. Having said all that, I have no excuses for people who know there is no way in 4 years, in 8 years, in 12 years, we'll simulate a human brain that sit here like Oded or perform like Oded, which is the best example I can give, sorry for the others, and be simulated or emulated in anything. So we have to be careful, because in 5 years, in 10 years, there will be people who come back and say, let me, Sami nods his head. I want to know what you have done.
Governments will come.
Governments will come. And this will destroy our funding. So we have to be more careful when the funding comes from the outside. If you risk your own career, that's fine. We all risk our own career, or most of us here and there. I'm risking my own career now. Thank you. I don't.